Even after having midichlorians painfully explained to you in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, watching folks levitate many a rock or choking the life out of their enemies, and learning a ton about this energy field created by all living things on the big screen in particular, there's still an awful lot you probably don't know or possibly even just forgot about the Force. Like you probably weren't aware of some of the different names it went by across this galaxy, or some of the utterly insane things some Force users were able to actually pull off when using it. Without further ado then, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 things you didn't know about the Force, probably. Number 10, the Jedi used Force lightning. Kicking things off with a bang, or should that be a zap? One of the most impressive abilities ever unleashed by Force users in the galaxy far, far away comes in the form of the lightning shot out of many a figure walking around on the dark side. The likes of Emperor Palpatine and Count Dooku are the most famous Star Wars big bads to strike down their enemies with bolts of electricity from their fingers. Though, according to Cavan Scott's Dooku Jedi Lost Canon novel, Dooku would actually first use it as a Jedi before his fall to the dark side. So now you know. Rey was technically the first Jedi to shock on the big screen during Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, when she accidentally fired electricity at the ship she thought was carrying Chewbacca. That is ship with a P. However, they are actually not the only times Jedi have used this powerful Force technique. If you've never really wandered into the expanded universe of Star Wars, you probably didn't know that the likes of Plo Koon and Luke Skywalker have used a version of this power in various Legends books too, such as Ryder Wyndham's Jedi vs. Sith: The Essential Guide to the Force, and Troy Denning's Crucible. Here though, the ability goes by the name of Electric Judgment, and comes in a few different colors, with golden and green lightning being directed towards adversaries by these Jedi. Now, this didn't change the fact that it was still seen as a bit of a taboo and corruptive weapon within the Jedi Order, however, with this technique often linked to anger even being put onto the Forbidden Force Techniques list. Jedi Knights were also strictly not allowed to use it, or they'd get their lightsaber confiscated. I may have made that last part up. Now, I've got a quick question for you. What is your favorite Force moment that you've ever seen in Star Wars? Let me know all about it in the comment section down below. Now back to the video. Number 9, a high M count doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be strong with the Force. It's explained during Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, that young Anakin Skywalker shockingly has a midichlorian count higher than even Master Yoda. However, even with that being the case, a high midichlorian count doesn't simply equate to being super Force sensitive and strong with the Force. That number actually just explains how much potential a person has to become a powerful Force user, with an awful lot of training still being needed to turn that notable M count into an individual capable of wielding the Force. The average Jedi Master boasted an M count of between 10,000 to 14,000, with Master Yoda having an impressive 17,700 count, and the Chosen One blowing that out of the water with a ridiculous 27,700. That's all according to the Legends Star Wars graphics reference book. However, those pages also revealed that none other than General Grievous actually had a surprisingly high M count too, possessing an 11,900 per cell midichlorian count. Now that's higher than bloody Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon. Again though, that strong number created in Legends due to Grievous being infused with midichlorian-rich blood from Jedi Master Sifo Dyas to help him heal from the numerous operations needed to transform him into a cyborg menace, didn't automatically mean he would be Force sensitive. And though he frustratingly wasn't gifted Force sensitivity after the infusion, that still didn't stop him from taking down many a Jedi and nicking their lightsabers for good measure. He could not be stopped. I mean, he could by a blaster. Number 8, it goes by many different names. While it may be most commonly known as the Force in the Skywalker saga and the majority of Star Wars media, the mystical energy was actually known by different names to different people throughout the galaxy. Those who enjoyed the latest Lucasfilm offering on Disney Plus will already be aware that the coven of Force-sensitive witches on Brendok referred to the energy field as the Thread, feeling that it was something that connected the galaxy, binds you to others, and tied you to your destiny. galaxy, rather than just being a power to be wielded. Elsewhere in this Star Wars universe, the Lasat, like Zeb from Star Wars Rebels, refer to it as the Ashla, or as the spirit of the galaxy. Chiss folk like Grand Admiral Thrawn called it the Sight. Zephonians, as seen in the Jedi Fallen Order video game, gave it the name of the Life Wind. And many other cultures had their own way of connecting to what most Star Wars fans know as the Force. This all unquestionably helps make the galaxy far, far away feel like a more diverse and rich universe. One that, similarly to our own world and its many religions, contains groups who interpret and worship this sacred power differently depending on where they are in it. Number 7. The Force wasn't George Lucas's first choice of name. And while on the subject of the name of that power used by many a Jedi, Sith, and Witch over the decades, you may be surprised to learn that George Lucas didn't originally plan on calling it the Force for 1977's Star Wars. No, back when the creator of this galaxy far, far away was crafting that iconic picture and tapping away through the first few drafts of the script, he actually mentioned the Force of Others. A rather familiar line of "May the Force of Others be with you all" was present in that first draft, while the second brought with it the reveal of the Jedi Bendu of the Ashla keeping this power of the Force of Others a secret. Ashla, a name used by the Lasat when talking about the Force as already noted, was classed as the light side, while Bogan was seen as the dark side in that second draft too. It wasn't until the fourth draft of the script that Lucas eventually opted to cut away "of others" and go for the slightly simpler "the Force" instead, with the likes of Bendu, Ashla, and Bogan all ultimately popping up in the Star Wars universe in their own way later down the road. The Bendu from Star Wars Rebels actually uses those names when talking about the light and dark side during that animated series. And Lucas's smart call to trim down the name of this mystical power also made one iconic line a bit less of a mouthful too. And speaking of which, number 6, Obi-Wan Kenobi wasn't the first person to say the famous Force line in Star Wars. When the legendary phrase of "May the Force be with you" is uttered in your vicinity, you'd be forgiven for instantly thinking of an equally iconic white beard and cloak. I mean, after all, the great Sir Alec Guinness was the first person to speak those words on screen in a Star Wars picture. Only he wasn't really. In fact, despite many folks' minds tricking them into thinking they definitely heard the icon state these Force words during the original trilogy, Guinness never once said that often repeated statement on screen. Not once. While Guinness's Ben Kenobi would obviously mention the Force on screen in Episode 4 A New Hope, and eventually tell Luke, "Remember, the Force will be with you always," the first person to drop a respectful "May the Force be with you" in that original 1977 movie was actually Rebel General Jan Dodonna, played by Alex McCrindle. That is precisely how he signs off the Rebels meeting, focusing on how they're gonna blow up the Death Star, with that famous Force good luck phrase then ultimately being repeated by many a Star Wars icon in the years that followed. Even Ewan McGregor's version of Obi-Wan Kenobi said it. Thank you very much for tapping on this list today, my friend, and if you're enjoying your What Culture Star Wars experience, then go and hit that subscribe button down below for more of this kind of What Culture Star Wars stuff in your life. Now back to the video. Number 5. Force Invisibility. Returning to the ways the Force could be used to assist those who possess the power to wield it. Wait till you get a load of this rare ability. As seen in the expanded universe, a number of folks within the Jedi Order and outside of it actually learned how to use something known as Force Cloak. By manipulating the sound and light waves around them, they could pretty much make themselves entirely invisible to the average onlooker. It was something that was said to be super tough to learn, so it'd mostly be utilized by those who had a natural ability for it. It also took an awful lot out of the person doing the cloaking, requiring a freakish amount of concentration and energy to keep up. If you're wondering if any well-known Jedi or Sith secretly had this useful tool in their back pocket, well, it turns out that in Legends continuity, the likes of Quinlan Vos, Aayla Secura, and even the Chosen One himself, Anakin Skywalker, could all go full Harry Potter and throw out their own invisibility cloak of sorts when the time called for it. So there you have it, Force camouflage was definitely a thing in the expanded universe. How useful. Number 4. Force Orbs. Keeping with those very much rare powers that Force users have been able to rely on from time to time in the worlds of Star Wars, here's one that has actually shown up in both canon and Legends tales. though it's still not a skill that tends to spring to mind when the average person thinks about the Force. During two moments that both involve the green tentacled badass known as Jedi Master Kit Fisto, this powerful Force-sensitive soul is shown using the rather useful Force Orb tool. In the Star Wars The Clone Wars animated series, Fisto and Anakin Skywalker combine to create one of these underwater bubbles on Mon Calamari, after Padme Amidala's glass helmet begins to leak in water in the wake of it being cracked open slightly by Riff Tamsin. Look at his shaky face. They use the Force to push the surrounding water away from her helmet, before Jar Jar Binks provides a better solution in the form of his Gungan spit. Yep, lovely. On the Legends side of things, and again on Mon Calamari, Fisto uses this ability in a far more offensive way during the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars microseries, crafting a large ball of Force energy underwater and launching it right at the legs of an enemy cannon. A Force bubble for all occasions. Number 3, mushrooms on a Force-sensitive planet showed Luke Skywalker act toe. You've likely heard a number of characters within the galaxy far, far away discuss different kinds of vergences in the Force. These come in many different shapes and sizes, of course, from entire planets to little pod race champions turned evil lords of the Sith. In short, they're extraordinarily concentrated amounts of Force energy found in a single place, thing, or person. And one of those was actually discovered by Luke Skywalker in the pages of Charles Soule's Star Wars No. 20 comic. It's during his quest to learn more about certain vergences in the Force out in the galaxy that he learned of the living Sea of Gazian, a living planet found in the Mid-Rim's Gazian system. Said living sea actually consisted of a ton of mushrooms, with all of these boasting hallucinatory spores that Luke ended up experiencing firsthand when he fell into the fungus. And it was after tumbling into the shrooms that something remarkable happened. In this area that was incredibly strong with the Force, Luke conversed with the imprints of a Jedi Master called Elzar Mann. The planet took imprints of the minds of those who came to the world and was able to recreate them as they were at the exact moment they visited. And long before he'd end up exiling himself there after the fall of his own Jedi temple, Luke also actually saw a vision of Ahch-To, the birthplace of the Jedi Order and place where Skywalker himself would eventually become one with the Force. So not only was there a Force-sensitive world of mushrooms out there in the galaxy, it also showed Luke the first glimpse of his future in a way. Number 2, Marikro. She may not have had a lot to say for herself on the big screen at least, but you better believe that Jedi Master Yaddle secretly had one hell of a Force power up her sleeves, people. Also known as the Touch of Death within the Star Wars franchise, which is a demented name, you probably didn't know that Yaddle was one of the only people on the Jedi Council allowed to use the incredibly dangerous Marikro Force ability. Again, classed as a forbidden technique to Jedi Knights in the expanded universe, this shocking power actually slowed down a person's biological functions. That meant that breathing and your heart rate were in big trouble the minute Yaddle decided to go full Marikro on your ass. But it was also a ridiculously useful tool for the person capable of using it too, with said Force user being able to use the ability on themselves to go without food, water, or even air for some time if they really needed to. If one doesn't keep a close eye on the person they're using Marikro on though, there's a chance the target could actually end up dying, making it one hell of a scary weapon. It's not that hard to see why this Force lesson wasn't taught right after a Padawan had lifted their first pebble. Number 1, Shatter Points. Ending with one final intriguing Force power you more than likely didn't even know existed, Master Yaddle's fellow Jedi Council member Mace Windu also had a little seen but incredibly valuable Force ability in his arsenal. You see, the greatest champion of the Jedi Order was actually one of the few people who could sense Shatter Points in this galaxy far, far away. What are they? Well, I'm glad you asked. These are those crucial moments throughout history when intervention could have a gigantic impact on the future. But the term also applies to some things or even someone's weakness, meaning the user can sense that and whack the precise part of it needed to completely obliterate it. Windu sensed one of those structural shatter points during the Liberty of Ryloth Star Wars The Clone Wars episode, and also in the expanded universe identified Count Dooku as a shatter point, just before the first Battle of Geonosis, one that could have ended the war right there. That's according to the Matthew Stover Shatterpoint novel. Darth Sidious was also capable of sensing these vital moments too, doing exactly that during the Aftermath Empire's End novel by Chuck Wendig, when he felt a Shatterpoint, aka Luke Skywalker, was about aboard the Tidirium ship landing on Endor in Return of the Jedi. Can you imagine being able to sense when a specific moment or even a person was about to have a monumental impact on both your own life and the world as people knew it? That is one hell of a force flex right there.